Okay, this video will be focusing on how to actually break free from the cycle, the sort of autopilot you experience on a day-to-day basis that has lasted for years on end, and how everything seems to consistently repeat itself over and over again. Okay, before I begin, I'm gonna share some boring stuff that you're gonna want to skip this part maybe. First off, it's a new setup with a new mic. If you're interested, comment on whether or not how it sounds and whether it's better or not. I'm interested in that because I'm always trying to improve the videos. My name is Kai Paul. If you get bored in the video, just watch it at 2x speed or something. I don't exactly have any fancy edits or something to make it really easy to watch through or whatever. You're here because you want to improve, not because you want entertainment. If you watch till the end, that's how you know you're different towards other people. I'm gonna first describe maybe the monotonous cycle you seem to experience. That day-to-day grind where, to begin, first there's that air raid siren that begins like blasting nearby. It's called your alarm clock or your phone or whatever you use for your alarm. You wake up, there's an air raid siren, your heart rate is spiking, you're sweaty from last night, you had poor sleep, it took you like 3 hours to fall asleep, and you're constantly tired, and then you have to get up. It's a whole nother day of work. You have to get ready first. You have to put on your work clothes and everything, have your breakfast, and then, the commute again, the depressing commute when you step outside and it's like grey light, like especially if you're in the UK or whatever, those clouds and there's just that constant grey light when it's dark and everything. It's just miserable. You just go outside and you're reminded this is the kind of hell that you exist in. And then you commute to work however long it takes you, half an hour, 1 hour, that sucks. And that takes away a bunch of time. You can pretend that, you only work 8 hours in your job, but really you're working like 10 because that includes your commute. If you commute for 1 hour to work, that's 2 hours because you have to commute back. And then there's your job, which is the 8 hours. So that's automatically already 10 hours. But, we're going to pretend that it's only 8 because that's what society wants you to believe or whatever. So you enter your job, there's that dreadful feeling, like you get that sort of background feeling about how much you don't want to be there and how much you hate it. But you need to get paid, and regardless, you're going to have to get through the day somehow. You're going through the third hour and you're just thinking about how you've been doing this for years on end and how much you hate it, how horrible it is, and just how you really, really want to get out of there. And you see everybody else's, miserable faces as they continue to work, and you're just like, dang, I have another hour of this until my next break. And then by the time you actually come back, oh wait, there's another commute you have to do. There's the whole journey back. That you have to get through. And then by the time you actually arrive home, you're completely exhausted. There's like a switch. Like, even if you kind of wanted to improve and change your life, the second you come home, there's like somebody just turns a switch on you. Like, you don't even know where it came from or how this happened, like, outright, because you just don't really want to think about anything. Like, your work has drained all the energy out of you. And then you're just completely exhausted by the time you come home. But you gotta get changed, of course, and then you gotta cook food, and then sort out all the chores and stuff. And there's another 1-2 hours of your day gone after you already spent 10 hours of, doing bullcrap. So now you only have like 2-3 hours left of the day, and this is probably looking a little bit like your free time, but you're a little bit too exhausted to even think about trying to improve your life or anything, right? So what you end up doing, and because you're addicted as well, you end up pulling out your phone and scrolling, because social media is designed to be as addicting as possible, right? You end up scrolling for those 4 hours actually. So now you're 1 hour into your bedtime. Then you realize, I need to get ready for bed. And then you go brush your teeth or whatever, and you get ready for bed. You lay in there, and then you're not falling asleep for 2-3 hours for some reason. Let's just ignore the fact that maybe you drank coffee right before bed as well. I don't know. It's, you drank coffee at 12 a.m. and then you were scrolling on your phone. You have the blue light, shining in your eyes. But let's just ignore all of that, right? You're not falling asleep for 3 hours, and you finally fall asleep, and you only get like 4 hours of sleep. And then you wake up to the air raid siren again. Your heart rate spikes and you're like, oh my lord, this is day 2 of the week. And then you gotta go to work and repeat the cycle over and over again. Of course, it's going to massively vary because I have no idea what you actually do in the day. I don't know what your job is. I don't know what kind of chores you do. I'm just trying to paint an image to gain an idea. Whatever you are in, I'm going to assume most likely you are kind of repeating the same thing over and over again. That is sort of the experience for most people. You're probably in the monotonous cycle, the hell cycle, over and over again. So this video is going to be focused on trying to get out of that as much as possible. It's kind of the same process for me. So when I describe what is like how to actually get out of the hell cycle, I'm describing what I'm doing right now anyways. I even made my bed up and I have the setup, you know, just to make it more professional, hopefully. I don't know. So section 1 is awareness. So what awareness is, this is important to understand, because before we can go into anything, you need to know what awareness means. Awareness is just understanding and highlighting, just noticing the environment around you. Let's just kind of say it like that. So you notice an object, you notice how you react to things, you notice other things going on. That is you noticing things within your environment, and that can include you. And that is called being aware. Why is it important to be aware? Awareness is important because it is the difference between being able to change your life and staying stuck and wondering why you're stuck. Sort of, you can imagine it like, maybe like, if you think back to old times in history or whatever, like you have the Roman gods, the Greek gods or something, or like the Aztec, like how they used to believe the sun or something, like you had to sacrifice somebody for the sun to rise. Like the Aztecs might be the best example, right? They would sacrifice people. They would end human life or whatever. And the only reason they would do that is because of a lack of awareness to realize that the sun was just a ball of flaming gas in space. They thought that this was a god who was judging them or whatever, and their lack of awareness caused them to initiate in these evil actions. So the difference between, I mean, it's kind of integrated within their culture and everything as well, and all the social dynamics and social rules they would have had. It would have been like, even if you were aware of it at the time, you were one individual in amongst, you know, thousands of others who would disagree with you. But if everybody was aware, then they would stop initiating those evil actions, for example. That's kind of like a moral understanding maybe, but within awareness and changing your life and stuff, the reason why it's important is because in order to initiate, you cannot initiate without being aware of what you need to change and what the problems are with you. So this could include your bad habits or whatever that you have, or how your environment is like all really messy, or just being aware of the cycle that you're actually in. If you go through your day-to-day and feel miserable, you're struggling a lot, and you're not really aware that you can improve your life and that it has to stay like this forever, that means you're probably going to be stuck there for like the rest of your life just working that job, because you're never going to try to do anything. You're going to have these like boundaries which you never really try to test or escape, and you're just going to remain stuck within the boundaries set by society, these imaginary ones anyways. Kind of like a fishbowl. I think the best way, or the best analogy actually for the importance of awareness, is if you're a goldfish in a fishbowl, everything is fine within your own system. Like you probably are struggling, whatever, and everything, right? But everything is fine within your system, where you go to work, you hang out with certain people or whatever throughout the day, and then you repeat the same process day by day by day. But once you try to escape and try to actually control your life, let's say you kind of want to have a bit of a longer holiday, or you kind of want to just not work today. Well, like what if you didn't want to work today? What would you have to do? You'd have to talk to your boss, right? Just to be able to escape that sort of, like, to have any kind of control. But this is the point. When you test the boundaries, when the goldfish tries to escape, it realizes there's these glass walls, there's this glass barrier that actually stops it from escaping. This is kind of the same thing with your life. If you're unaware, then you will never try to change anything, because you think you're in an ocean. Because you think, oh, I could change things if I wanted to, right? I could just do it easily. Have you ever tried to actually change? And have you seen how hard it is? That's called you, the goldfish, walking into, well, swimming, because you're a goldfish, but swimming into a glass wall. And then there's that impact, and then you realize, oh, that didn't really work. Try a different direction, and you try the other direction. It's another glass wall. You try this one to the right, there's another glass wall, and then behind, there's a glass wall. There's glass walls everywhere. That is the barrier that you have between improving yourself. Everything seems possible and easy. You seem like you're in an ocean of possibility until you test it. And then you realize you are more in prison than you could have ever realized. Changing stuff does not come quickly. If you've ever tried to change your life within a week, that does not happen. It happens over months and years because you have to slowly erode the walls that are surrounding you. You don't escape immediately. If you keep trying to, if you just try to escape for a week, you're not gonna get through those glass walls. But the first step is awareness. And also self-accountability is also very important. If you don't have enough humility to sit there and take accountability for your life being your fault, I'm not saying it's all your fault, but the reason you want to have this mindset that at least maybe 50% of it is your fault, I'm saying this because you need to have you need to have some control within your own perception and dynamic. When you put away all your self-accountability and put blame onto everybody else, your situation is in control of these other people. Your situation is in control of your environment. You have no more power. When you blame everything else and you take away your own self-accountability, you're hurting yourself more than you're hurting anybody else or something. You're not protecting yourself by blaming other people. These other people become the controllers of the barriers of your own life. And they control everything. Change your mindset about that and take self-accountability. It's crucial. If you don't, you're going to stay stuck. It's just as important as awareness. Being arrogant is probably one of the worst things. It is choosing to be unaware because you believe that you are sufficiently knowledgeable and sufficiently... I guess the simplest way of saying is being arrogant is terrible because it kind of locks you out of ever improving yourself. It locks you out of self-accountability and it locks you out of awareness. Like I already said how important awareness is, and I said how important self-accountability is, right? So if you're arrogant, you don't have any self-accountability and you have no awareness. You choose your ego over knowledge within being arrogant, right? Why arrogance is so terrible is because you're locking yourself out of improving. When you believe that you don't need to hear any advice. So this is very crucial, especially for this video, right? If you want to actually extract value, you can't sit there and assume everything that you think is right. It might be right. It may be correct. In that case, listen to yourself, but it might also be wrong. And you need to be open to different opinions and thoughts. And when you open up your mind to different perspectives, you're more able to gain more knowledge and you're more able to improve yourself. When you're arrogant, all you're doing is you're lifting up this very, very stupid ego that doesn't really do anything for you. This ego doesn't really exist for any reason besides just protecting your self-image. Within, there was no real image to begin with, but you have this self-image, your arrogance, your ego, you have this self-image that you want to preserve, and the only way that you find to preserve it is to just dismiss everything else everybody says and to only trust yourself, always in every case and scenario. Then you're going to remain stuck because you won't want to try to improve because you're afraid of stepping outside of that ego. Your ego becomes your prison and your barrier. It's just the same as the fishbowl. Then your ego becomes the fishbowl in terms of arrogance, right? And then it's really yourself more than anything at that point, not just other people. That's why you need to be open to different ideas. I'm just going to point that out as well. I'm here to remember to help you out. And I'm not here to attack you for anything. I'm not to assume anything about you. I occasionally give examples because maybe it's a hit or miss. Maybe, you're watching this and you match the kind of criteria that I give out. And I'm only saying those things to try and hopefully help you. So I'm going to go into describing awareness a little bit more specifically then. The kind of things that you need to be aware of. So I described why awareness is important. Now I'm going to describe more examples and more situations where awareness can be helpful. So awareness of your environment is number one. Awareness of your environment means understanding that the food that you eat, the kind of people that you're around, the workplace you go to, and your own very home have an impact on your own mental state. When you go home and your home is messy, you've got a massive pile of dishes on one side, you don't want to look at it. It's a horrible pile of dishes. I don't know, there's random crap all over the floor, like, just left some junk on the floor or something. You can't really find anything. Everything's disorganized. The people you talk to suck. The workplace you go to is horrible. It's toxic. It's just not a fun job to be going to because it's just so hard, and you always have to give max energy and everything. If you could change, for example, your job to find something easier, and that would be a massive improvement, because now you can preserve way more energy for home, right? And if you cleaned your room, then you'd actually have more clarity in your thoughts. You could find stuff way easier, and you just feel better about your own self and self-image, because you know that you're somebody who takes care of yourself. And then if you have positive people around you, that would impact you, because they would kind of boost you, encourage you to try and do stuff. Like, I'm trying to say, the difference of your environment is massive. You need to be aware of your environment first off. If you can be aware of your environment, that's going to be step one. Change the people around you. Try to clean up your room or whatever. Be aware of the food you eat and everything you put within your own system and body. Be aware of your habits as well. Number two, so all the bad habits that you have, like, do you smoke or drink or something, or you have a chronic social media addiction? Being aware of that allows you to try and improve those things as well. Pretty much all the things, like, the more aware you are of everything going around you, the more things you're able to improve. You cannot improve something if you're not aware of it. So I want you, and I'm going to encourage you, to try and develop awareness of as much stuff as possible, and take self-accountability for those things that you become aware of. If you want, even try to write down a long list of all the things that you haven't noticed or are worth noticing, like all the bad things that are going on in your life, and then some good things maybe as well. If you want to compare and see where there's been success in those areas, and compare how, there's been your areas of lack of success. So look at your habits and everything. Like, do you brush your teeth? Maybe you skip brushing your teeth on a consistent basis. Maybe you should be aware of that and take self-accountability, and write it down, and that's something you can improve. A final and really, really important point about what you should also be aware of, as another example, is your emotional state and mental state. A lot of people kind of ignore this because they kind of think it doesn't matter. When you go through the day-to-day and you feel absolutely miserable and depressed, and you're really struggling, and you kind of don't feel like doing anything, and you kind of just don't understand why you feel like you have this fog in your head all the time or whatever. It can be really, really helpful to just have some sort of awareness about that, just about your emotional state and mental state as well. I'm just going to encourage you, again, just write down everything, right? But your emotional state and your mental state is also another important thing. Write down how you feel, and then try to think why you feel like that. It might be pretty obvious, you could just say your job or whatever, but, besides just the obvious, try to go deeper into, the people and, the habits you have and everything that's going on that makes you feel that certain way. That has an impact, because if you're going to sit here and pretend that your emotions and mental state don't have an impact on your life, then you kind of you're living in complete ignorance there at that point. Because your emotional state and your mental state has such a huge impact that you can't even comprehend it. All I have to do is, what do you say, for example, when you don't want to go to the gym or something, and you don't want to, improve your life? Every once in a while, you might just say you don't feel like it, or you're too tired, or you're too depressed. If you just sit there and say that isn't important, you're legitimately saying the three things that are the reason and the difference between me improving my life don't matter. You're basically saying that it doesn't matter to improve your life. You need to have some kind of awareness of your emotional state and mental state in order to try and improve that. Again, you cannot improve anything if you're not aware of it. Number one is awareness. Then you need to have self-accountability. If you do not have self-accountability, then you're just going to be arrogant and everything, and you're going to believe you don't need to change, and you're going to stay stuck because you prefer your ego over improving your actual life. You have to make that sort of sacrifice if you genuinely want to improve. So there's your emotional state and mental state. Take note of those as well. So get your piece of paper out and just try to write down all the things that are worth mentioning. Your environment, the people, your home. Do you need to clean stuff up or whatever? Okay, write down all your habits, all the bad habits you have, and then write down how you feel right now, and then how you feel during the week and during the month, and then how that varies and the kind of influence it has on your day-to-day life, and then what you can maybe even do to try and improve that. But that's just awareness and kind of covering where to begin, right? This section was more highlighting the importance of being aware, and then some examples more than just outright giving points of advice. I'm going to get into next more about how to actually improve your life and stuff. So section 2 is covering planning and then why planning is important. So you might go through your day-to-day without any kind of structure at all. The only kind of structure you really have is that you wake up, you have your breakfast, you go to work, but then once the work hours are over, you come home and you probably don't really have much structure. A lot of what you do is dependent on how you feel. Planning is important because it creates that structure that you need. It creates the structure that you need to follow in order to control your life a little bit more. And I'm not just going to go into, planning your day-to-day or whatever. I'm going to go more deeper into planning your life. The reason you kind of ended up where you are is because you didn't have a plan, but society had a plan for you. When you went to school and they kind of led you down the funnel, the path, all the way through step by step through the school system until you got a job, and then you worked your way up a little bit, and then you got stuck, you plateaued. That was all a plan. That was outside of your plan. You didn't have any plan. This is why you ended up there. But step by step, there was this plan laid out by society. Your lack of planning and lack of awareness was what led you to this path. It's not your fault necessarily. It's just because nobody said anything about it. And it's because society has just programmed you in a certain way. And the people around you, like your friends, your family, your colleagues, all of these people have been programmed by the school system to think a certain way, to believe certain things are possible, and then they infect you with those same beliefs. They infect you with the same lack of awareness. They infect you with the same discouragement of improving yourself. You ever wondered why so many people are so against you trying to improve? If you've ever tried to improve, a lot of people have certain expectations that you won't stay consistent with those goals that you have, those actions. Like you decide, okay, I'm going to get into this thing that I'm actually going to try to improve. Like if you tell somebody that you're going to start a business, there's going to be a lot of mocking and a lot of hatred that comes from other people just for you saying that necessarily. Of course, there's going to be some people who don't care. It just massively varies. It might not be true for you. But if it is true, the reason that happens is because a lot of people have their hard set beliefs, hard set limits, the fishbowl. It's more just they don't want to see you performing better than them or anything. They don't want to see you try. They have their beliefs, and if you violate their beliefs, what you're doing is you're violating their set boundaries of what they believe is possible. They think that this thing isn't possible. That is their entire reality. If you violate what is possible, you are just destroying their understanding of reality, and that is a threat to their identity and their entire world. It's like, for that person, when you try to improve yourself and try to change your life, it is like watching the sky shatter. Like you realize you were in the Matrix all along, or in some kind of simulation, and you just see the sky start to crumble and shatter, and their entire basis and understanding of what is real and what isn't is completely crushed and crumbled by you trying to attempt something. Planning is important because it's thinking ahead and it's thinking in the future, especially if you can think more long term. So try and, this is kind of similar to when I told you to write down all the things to be aware of. Now I want you to try and focus on writing down all your specific problems that you have. Just try and be a little bit more specific. And then try to write down everything that you want. So get a notebook or a piece of paper. So you have all the things that you're aware of, good and bad. Write down, everything that you want, all the desires while staying realistic. And then write down all your problems. Write down the difference between you having the things that you actually want and then not having them. This is important because this is going to set the outline and direction of your life a little bit. Society has laid out this plan for you. You have followed it, step by step by step, and now you have ended up where you are. You're going to keep going in the exact same direction because society has laid out this specific direction. And now you're kind of deep in the mud with everything that's gone into your life. Now you're especially programmed, there's all the people around you, and you're kind of stuck as well. In order to change your life, the first step here is going to be have a goal and direction. You have to change the ship direction. If you're a sailing ship and you have you ended up on a random island, society told you go to this island, and they don't really explain why. They tell you it's bad if you don't go there. Like, you have to go to that specific island and land there, and you ended up on this random remote island, this random beach or whatever, and that has been a result of society laying out a random plan. And guess what? You end up where you don't want to be. You're on this random island where there's nothing good. I know, it's just a crappy island. It's like rocks everywhere. There's not even any sand, let's say. There's no trees, nothing. It's just a rock island. Like, it's barely much of an island at all. It sucks, right? And if you want to go to the Paradise Island, you have to actually go there. But before you can sail across all the seas and go through all the things that you won't be able to control, whatever, you won't be able to control, like, all the stormy weather, you won't be able to control the oceans, and you won't 100% know whether you are going in the right direction. But you need to have an idea. You need to get out the map, find where the Paradise Island is, find a direction that leads to there, and then actually aim towards it. This is going to involve writing down everything you want, writing down all your problems, and then writing down, most important, the difference between you having the thing you want and then you not having it. What is going on right now that is the reason that you don't have that thing? Is it because you're lazy? Is it because you're not fixing your sleep and diet or something? Is it because of other people or whatever? All of these things are going to be important in understanding and actually making a change in your life. And this is awareness again, right? This brings you back to awareness and that importance. Okay, it's kind of getting warm though. I'm just going to take off my robe. Kind of setting it up earlier for the video, but whatever. It's way too warm right now. Okay. So, the difference, like I said, between you having the thing and not having it. Write it down and try to understand, like, what is kind of like the problem with you and yourself that you need to overcome. Imagine your life, let's just say on a very simple basis, that you right now are at X point, here you are, you're a stick man or something. Stick man wants to improve his life, and there's the Y point that he wants to reach to. If he wants to get to Y point, he has to go through the wall of fire. The wall of fire is everything that you don't want to face. It is everything internal and external. Before you can even initiate changing your life, you have to go through this massive transformation, of a painful transformation as well, of looking at all the problems with yourself, understanding those are problems, so having awareness of it, planning the direction and everything, and then going through the pain required in changing. It is painful to be aware and to admit your own internal faults, and it is painful to actually improve them and to be different. This is the wall of fire you have to go through in order to try and improve your life. So on a fundamental basis, the difference between, this is to help you out in planning, right? So while you're writing this down, think as long as you need to, pause this video if you need to, but the difference between you having, you're in X and then you want to reach Y, the difference is going to be this wall of fire that you haven't gone through yet. You have to understand that there's these problems in yourself that you need to improve before you can even start. You have to go through the wall of fire, and to initiate, you have to go through a lot of pain. Being aware of all your problems and what you want is important here, because you write down all your problems, your internal and external problems. Try to separate them if you can to make them more specific. So the difference is this wall of fire, and then this wall of fire is the transformation process to getting to Y point. And if you look at everything, all your problems, and you write down everything you want, you're going to realize a lot of those problems are probably internal. So when you've written down all your problems, everything you want, and the difference between having it and not having it, what you also want to do then, in order to actually make a change, is you want to plan out the ideal day, just a perfect day within the week or whatever, on a work day or something, where you are like this perfect image of yourself, unstoppable, you're Superman or something. Then you go through your work, you wake up, blah, 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 you do everything. Maybe you don't even do that. Maybe you wake up at 5 a.m. or something, and the first thing you do is go for like a 10-mile run or something, or 5-mile run, whatever you're capable of. And then you come home, you eat something healthy for breakfast for once, instead of eating some sugary cereals or something, and you kind of already start start planning out the day a little bit more and stuff. You journal or something, you meditate in the morning, and by the time work has started, you've kind of already ticked off all this massive list of things you're supposed to do. Suddenly you're the perfect version of yourself. You do this workout, you come home, and then you work on your business. Maybe you start YouTube, and by the end of the day, you look at all the things you've done and you're just amazed by what you've actually achieved and the type of person you are. Try to plan this ideal day out. Get another piece of paper. You're gonna have a lot of piece of papers just to figure all this stuff out. So get your piece of paper, write down the ideal day, and then this is important because it gives you a sort of perfect guideline. You're not trying to actually achieve this. It just gives you an idea of what is possible within your own limits and boundaries. And you want to separate yourself really from your own self-beliefs. Like, you might have certain beliefs like, oh, I wouldn't be able to just write down like the perfect day, just write down the perfect day. Don't try to be too specific. Don't try to like map it out perfectly to who you are. Just write down the ideal day. And then now you have this sort of idea of who you could be. So you have this self-image, this alter ego to sort of follow. Because when you have the actions listed out, now you have a sort of alter ego, a framework. And this gives you a consistent like sort of goalpost that you can target towards in terms of improving yourself. And every time you take action, understand that you're one step closer to becoming that alter ego. Whenever you don't feel like doing something or you feel lazy, like you need to go for a run or something, you don't feel like it, think about what your alter ego would do. Think about that perfect day and compare yourself to that version. And look at the end of the day and what that alter ego actually manages to achieve. What do you genuinely believe this alter ego who's completely unstoppable could achieve within a year's time if they just day by day just grinded it out? And compare that to yourself right now. And then you got to really wonder, is it, the external? Is it other people that's really the differentiator between me having the life I want? Or is it myself maybe? I'm not saying it's always 100% your fault, but your alter ego would be an example, right? Your alter ego has the exact same situation as you do. But if they did all the things in a whole year and they have this massive kind of change, so then is it really the external or is it you? Is it you who needs to improve? And this is again bringing back to the painful truths that you have to realize. The wall of fire, the transformation. This is painful stuff. But if you go through the wall of fire, it is highly rewarding, highly worth it. So imagine yourself as the ship, the sailing ship. You want to end up on Paradise Island. You're going to have a goal and direction. You want to have an aim. So let's say within the year, okay, come on, this is going to go back to your New Year's resolution. If you have a New Year's resolution, how about you remember that? Write it down right now. If you had a New Year's resolution and you haven't done it yet, write it down again. You still have the whole year to do it. Then you already have the goal and direction. If you didn't have one, just try to think, what's something I want to achieve by the end of the year? This is going to be your compass. You can't get anywhere without a compass on your ship. You need some kind of direction. Okay, so by the end of section 2, I'm just going to repeat and sort of say, you need to have a goal and direction. This is going to be your compass. And then you want to have an alter ego to constantly compare to in order to see what you are right now and what you're genuinely capable of. So this generates self-accountability to genuinely improve and fuel your life further. If you want to be able to succeed, you need to have awareness, accountability, and something to compare it to. And the alter ego becomes that comparison point, which always drives you to improve. And then always make sure to have your goal and direction so you actually know where you're going and why you're doing everything. Everything you do must have a purpose. Everything you do needs to move the needle. You can get into an easy trap where you decide to start taking cold showers and you think that you're improving your life. Here's a really important point, actually. You think that cold showers, cold showers are healthy. But if you take cold showers and you think you're going to become a millionaire because you take cold showers every day for an entire year, this is going to be a big sort of mistake that you're going to believe in for far too long. And it's going to cause you a lot of pain when you realize you're not there. You need to think about things that kind of actually move the needle. When you have your goal and direction, you have somewhere to go. You've got the compass pointing to where you need to go. You've got the alter ego to compare to, but the alter ego wouldn't sit around and do pretend things either. The alter ego does everything important within actually improving their life. Every step they take has weight to it. Every step they take has importance and meaning to it. It's just an important quick point is make sure everything you do moves the needle. Okay, section 3 is initiating. If you want to be able to change your life, you need to understand that this is a sort of marathon that you need to accomplish. I told you need to have awareness, and I told you the importance of planning, and I told you to have this alter ego to constantly compare it to. And I told you that it's important to have all your actions have real weight behind them, do things that move the needle. So I'm going to remind you to have self-accountability here, realize it's your fault if you're not where you want to be. Not 100%, I only say that just to have more control over your life. And I'm going to tell you to try and write down 3 small things you can actually change by the end of the week. You have your big goal by the end of the year you want to change. If you want to initiate, actually change your life and actually do stuff, this is probably one of the most important sections, because initiating is almost always the hardest thing, right? If you think about the compound effect, what happens 90% of the time is that it's kind of like really, really flat and nothing really changes. And then once you reach the X point, it suddenly booms up, like it completely compounds. So if you can kind of understand that, you're at the, stage 1 where nothing's really going on, and, it takes ages before things actually improve. So to begin, because we want to actually set you up and actually succeed in the long term, we're going to start by just, you want to start by writing 3 small things you can actually change by the end of the week. So short-term goals. You have long-term goals, which gives you like the general paradise island you want to reach. The short-term goals are like, you want to reach these certain coordinates to make sure you're aligned with the paradise island. Think about like three things. You wrote down all your problems and everything, and you've thought about them for a little bit. What are some things that you can change? Like maybe you could sign up to the gym and then go 1 hour per week. Maybe you want to start writing. Let's say you want to write a book. Maybe you want to start writing 1 page per day or 1 page per week, whatever you're capable of. Or maybe you want to, let's say, start a business or something. Try to like just start outlining. Let's say you want to start something. Maybe by the end of the week, just have a plan of what the kind of business you want to start and what you want to do with everything. 3 small things that you want to change by the end of the week. This is just going to help you start, and it's going to help you get into the flow of doing stuff and just getting used to changing your life. Because when you start trying to improve your life, this is when you're most excited anyways. But the only reason you're excited is because there's this sort of difference between doing things and like just thinking about them. When you're in an excited state, you haven't really taken too much self-accountability here in terms of you haven't taken action yet. You haven't really changed anything yet. You've just written down a bunch of stuff on a piece of paper. You haven't proved that you're actually going to change your stuff, change your life. And this stuff takes a long time to get through and everything. So they must be small and possible. The reason this is important is because if it's too big, first off, it's a very short time frame anyways, we're talking. Like, the longer the time frame, the harder it is for your brain to kind of understand it. Our brains are very short-term things. No matter how much I keep preaching, you have to think in the long term, our brains are short-term. So you kind of need to adapt for that. Everything you build in terms of systems and tools and thinking or whatever, you want to set them up for the short-term sustainability, for the long-term sustainability. Just on a weekly basis, can you get through the week and then sustain your mental state and everything and stay fine? And then get to, the end of the year like that, because you get through week by week and it becomes normal. So it's important they're small and they're possible, because if they're too big, you won't get it done. You'll blame yourself and then you won't ever change your life. You have to be small so you can actually change things. So, you need to take baby steps with this. Perfection is delusion. If you think that you can... So when I say you have your perfect day, your alter ego, your perfect day, I mention that as a sort of comparison point. I don't want you actually trying to do this perfect day. If you manage to achieve that, you have a big risk of burning out if you do this for months and months and months. I'm only saying these things so you have a comparison point so you can take self-accountability. I'm not saying it because you have to perfectly do everything. You have your limits of possibility and you have your limits of discipline and willpower. And if you try to suddenly go from 0 to 100 and sustain that for months on end, it is the same thing as saying you want to go on a full sprint and be the fastest person to ever finish a marathon with 0 hours of training and 0 hours of preparation. That is called delusion. if you want to improve your life, you need to understand everything's a long-term game. And actually improving, it takes a long time. It takes baby steps, bit by bit by bit. The 3 small things that you want to achieve by the end of the week. If you try to go bigger than that, like, maybe it's possible, but you also don't want to burn yourself out. The closer you get to perfection, and the longer you sustain perfection, the more risk you have of burning out, and the more likely you are to do bad things within your own life, irreversible changes, because you'll be burnt out. And you could just be damaged in terms of your health, or you could really mess up your life in terms of, how you lash out at people, who you trust, and like you try to really suddenly make these big changes that kind of ruin your life and everything. Everything needs to be taken in consideration of planning and thinking long term and actually figuring out what you're doing with your life and everything. So you might be asking, why is it so hard to change? And I'm going to answer just by saying that your brain is highly resistant to changing, because if it did change outside of things that have already worked, then it would run the risk of dying. Your brain is a survival efficiency machine, and if you try to change, even for the better, there's a risk within change. There's a risk that things go bad, things go wrong. Like, even if you just think about, like, if you're a caveman, you decide, I want to live in this new location, there would be a risk that that location could have more predators, and there was a higher chance that you die. So there might be some uncertainty in changing your environment. That's like the kind of caveman survival explanation, but otherwise, it's hard to change because there's just this wall of fire that you have to get through. The metamorphosis required to achieve your desired state is painful because you're literally killing your old self in order to achieve this. And also because it just takes so long. You're actually in the hardest period of the compound curve. It gets a hell of a lot easier when you've gotten through a long period of this kind of stuff. When you're at first in the compound curve, you're at the flat point. You go through 90% of this being flat. It's going to suck really bad for you. Everything's going to look the same. Nothing changes, nothing changes, nothing changes until you reach X point, and suddenly everything changes. Suddenly everything goes through the roof. Make sure that you're actually constantly improving and you're actually moving things, moving stuff in terms of moving the needle. Everything you do needs to have a purpose and needs to have a reason. Everything you do needs to move things. But you have to understand that things won't be moved straight away either. Compound curve means you're going to be flat 90% of the time, but when you reach X point, it's going to shoot up. The hard point you're at right now is the point where you have no external validation. Nobody cares what you're doing. Nothing's really working. You're getting no results. You're kind of like, it's like the kind of, the thing you'd expect to be tested on when you're at the peak, right? You're like, oh, it gets way harder at the peak. No, it gets way easier at the peak. It's really hard at the beginning for some reason. When you're least capable, and then that's when you're being tested the most. Try to treat it like survival, maybe. All you have to do is survive the 90% of the time where you're not succeeding. Like, this could take 5-10 years. So 9 years, nothing happens. It's crap. Everything's the same. And then suddenly the next year, you just transform your life. This is like sometimes when you see the overnight successes, like of, really successful people, that only existed because it took 10 years of preparation. It took 10 years of building up this compound curve, and then the overnight success was the compound. So that kind of is covering the compound curve and the importance of baby steps or whatever, like covering how to actually start and initiate. So you need to understand that it is going to be your own responsibility in taking action. And nothing can change if you don't do anything. If you input nothing, you're going to get nothing. Planning isn't enough. Awareness isn't enough, but it is crucial. And those are crucial in initiating. But the number one thing that's going to be the differentiator is whether you can take action for, however long until the compound curve, until X point, and sustain that action. Think more in marathon terms. Think more in sustainability. Action that's short term won't get anywhere. If you blast out as much as you can, you're in the compound curve, all you've done is move a little bit forward here, but it feels like you did so much, right? In a month, you burn out, and then you end up lower than when you started. That's useless. Sustainable action, you want to just stay flat for long enough. Like, just make sure you can keep going. In a marathon, you don't run full sprint. You run at a pace you can actually keep up. You run really slow and easy. It seems easy at first because you haven't done it for a long time yet. But when you keep going and going and going, you reach the X point and then it compounds. And then, you know, you realize like how much harder this journey is probably going to be than you realize. But when you get close to the finish line and you actually reach the X point, it changes the whole game. Everything changes. Your whole reality changes. Everything that you believe and understand changes. It just requires so much pain to get through. And this is why most people won't achieve anything, you know? Outside of just your external circumstances and external reasoning, if you're lucky enough to be able to succeed, then there's this compound curve that you have to get through. There's this wall of fire you have to actually walk through. Most valuable, so covering section 4, consistent, most valuable is that you're consistent. The compound curve won't actually really happen unless you're consistent. If you do one thing and then do it the next year once only, that's not enough consistency and not enough volume to actually compound. To improve your life, you need to stay consistent. This is probably the number one thing. This is why I kind of say sustainability is crucial. You want to just keep going in that sort of path, but consistency is even more important, just as important as sustainability, I would say, right? You want to do this thing day by day by day by day. Every time you think you're silly for trying, that you're messing things up, you know, you failed that day or whatever, worry less about that. Think more about the long-term reward of it, right? The day by day where you're doubting your ability to sort of get this work done, your ability to keep going, why you're doing it, your own self-doubt, everything, right? Your ability to stay consistent day by day by day, despite all the, you know, all the crap that's thrown your way. This is crucial in actually building up the compound curve. All we're talking here is volume, right? But this volume, for it to actually mean anything, if it was just volume straight up, then it's linear and it never really reaches anything. For the compound curve to work, you need that consistent value given, that consistent action, day by day by day by day by day, thousands of days later, and then you can actually feel the compound curve. Because every day you change something, you're improving something a little better, you learn a little bit more. When you become more aware, now you plan a little bit better, and now you take more action a little better. And if you do this day by day, it's not linear, it compounds. But for it to compound, you have to stay consistent. You have to build up the sort of habit of discipline, build up the habit of actually getting work done. Okay, so I'm going to cover the importance of systems just quickly, briefly. I had a whole video about systems. Check that out if you want to understand how systems work, but I'm going to briefly cover systems over here and the importance. The reason I'm saying it is because it's going to set you up for the long term, and it's going to set you up for being consistent. You need to make sure that you optimize your environment. Why do you need to optimize your environment? This is when I was talking about earlier about the awareness and everything. You want to optimize your environment so you feel better, so you can actually do this stuff for way longer or whatever. Like, you know, when you wake up, give yourself 10 minutes extra to prepare for work so you're not dealing with the hell. Like, you can actually comprehend what's going on, for example. That's kind of optimizing your environment. Clean up your room so you feel a little bit better about yourself, you know. Make sure your room is nice or whatever. When you work, like, at home, make sure it's comfortable. Make sure your sleep is optimized so you actually have good sleep, that sort of thing. You want to optimize your systems and tools, so make sure to get an app blocker, get a habit tracker, and get a schedule. And then just figure out and adapt to how those things would work really, really well for you. If you have an app blocker, make sure, like, look at the things that you spend the most time on and then figure out how to optimize it. Like, if you need to use it because you make social media or something, I'd recommend getting an app blocker anyways and doing work on a computer. If you don't have a computer, get grayscale then. Just turn on the grayscale filter on your phone. There's a bunch of videos on YouTube, and like you could just Google it, how to do it and stuff. But just turn on grayscale, and that's going to reduce the addiction because it's just mostly color anyways, right? App blocker to kind of kill off all the addiction and all the time wasting, remove all the bad habits, right? First, then you want to add stuff in, but next is going to be the habit tracker. Write down everything you actually want to get done. This is kind of going to relate a little bit to your ideal day that I was talking about earlier, but the habit tracker it just shows you what you need to get done day by day, and it's this accountability partner, similar to your alter ego. When you look at your alter ego, what would that alter ego do? The habit tracker is kind of just an indication of that. It could legit just be alter ego would do all of this. The perfect version of yourself will get all of this stuff done, but make sure it's actually possible as well, within reason. So, you know, think about your alter ego as a comparison point, but probably more just, I'm kind of contradicting myself here a little bit, but I'm just trying to say that you also want to be able to stay consistent, stay sustainable. And if you consistently look at your stuff and you're like, oh, I keep failing, that's not useful either. So just write down things that, you know, you think you'd actually be able to get done. write it down in your habit tracker. Just set it up day by day. There's a bunch of habit tracker tools. You can just search up whatever. It's not important which one you use. Just use any that actually does the thing. And then use a schedule. This is really, really important, because then you want to, it's going to help you separate into time blocks what you need to get done day by day, dependent on what kind of energy is suitable for you. Schedules are important because it's like you have different energy levels throughout the day. Like in the morning, okay, you got to work your job and you got all the energy is spent over there. When you come back in the evening on the weekdays, you're not going to have high energy. So try to put low energy tasks on the weekdays, like doing chores and stuff that you don't like doing, maybe working out or something, stuff that doesn't take much mental thinking. And then on the weekend, try to like schedule like, high mental tasks, difficult tasks, because that's when you have way more energy. You don't have a whole job to get through. Try to do all the hard stuff in the morning and then do all the easy stuff towards the evening when you have less energy. So schedule, separate stuff into time blocks dependent on your kind of energy levels, whatever. And this should align with your habit tracker or whatever, right? You have your certain things to get done, and depending on the category and the type of sort of work block that you have, then you do different things on your schedule. You kind of want to avoid self-blame here. If you don't get this stuff done, you don't want to blame yourself just because you didn't achieve it. Just try to avoid being perfect, because it's called being that's called being delusional. Then if you fail to get your habit tracker stuff done, if you're not following your schedule perfectly, or maybe the app blocker isn't working as well as you want to, remember this is a long-term stuff, long-term kind of time frame thing. You want to just gradually improve these things. You yourself is the person who needs to improve gradually. So, maybe you need to find a better app blocker. Maybe you just need to optimize your habit tracker to actually find things that you can actually do consistently and get a schedule that actually works. But, if this is stuff that's actually possible and you fail because of whatever circumstances, don't beat yourself up for it. Understand that this stuff is a gradual process. So with the habit tracker, if you get 90% of the stuff done, that is an excellent day. Don't beat yourself up because you didn't do 100%. You still did 90% of the things. In the schedule, if you followed only 70% of the schedule, you still followed 70% of the schedule. This is way more productive than when you didn't have these tools. That means they are working. Just avoid self-blame and avoid falling into this trap to think that this stuff isn't actually working. While your willpower, motivation, and discipline are very crucial, they're kind of the engine of movement. You have to understand that relying on these systems and tools and optimizing your environment, like I mentioned, is going to be very, very important. Because if you just rely on willpower, motivation, and discipline, and you don't optimize anything, then, like I said, for example, the weekdays, you have no energy left. So you really kind of are running on low fumes with willpower, motivation, and discipline. But then it comes to actually you doing work, you kind of let's say you need, 50 points of discipline or something to get a task done, and you only have 10, and then you beat yourself up for it because you don't have enough discipline to get it done, and you didn't really use any systems or anything to act as a leverage point, then you're just going to end up stuck in this endless cycle of just you try to do stuff, you don't have enough discipline points, and then you beat yourself up for it, and then rinse and repeat over and over and over again, and you go downward spiral because, you have lower and lower self-worth every time. Or you can optimize your time so that you optimize tasks depending on energy levels. So when you have more discipline points, then you do work that is harder, logical, right? Pretty rational stuff. And then your systems, like all the tools you have, like the app locker, you reserve willpower points. You're no longer resisting apps because the legit block, the more strict the app blocker is, the better as well. What you won't find app blockers that block your settings and you can't uninstall it and stuff like that. And if you have to pay for it, it's absolutely worth it. I'm just going to say that. But you want to find stuff the app locker removes the willpower points that you need, so you can actually use willpower in resisting, bad food or something instead of wasting it on resisting those apps. You get the habit tracker, so you save energy and discipline points on kind of thinking about what you need to get done. Now you know straight away what to do, and the schedule is optimizing when you have more discipline and motivation points or whatever, right? Optimizing all of this stuff acts as a leverage point or whatever for your motivation and discipline and willpower, right? So let's just say your energy is your engine, and then your systems and tools in your environment are the leverage. Your engine can only go so far until, there's nothing left or whatever for fuel. But if you have if you have a car and you have these really, really thick tires that are terrible at efficiency and conserving energy, you're going to struggle to move forward. If you have these massively thick tires for no reason, and you're going to find out it's going to be really, really hard. No matter how strong the engine is, no matter how powerful that engine is, if you have terrible wheels, there's way too much friction, you have a terrible car, you're not going to move anywhere. But then this is the point. Like, your tires are like the systems, and you know, your car, your vehicle is the systems and tools you have and everything, right? That's your leverage point. And then your internal state of discipline, willpower, motivation is going to be your own, your engine, right? As the car. So systems are the lever and energy is the engine. Okay, so section 5 is going to be covering the importance of long-term thinking. I'm going to call it the marathon as the analogy which works best in understanding it. So why is it important to think long-term over short-term, you may ask? And I'm going to answer by saying, when you think short-term, there's a big problem. Like what I mentioned, for example, with the burnout, you assume that you're going to be able to keep doing that thing for a long period of time. And when you have to do, like, you have this perfect, the ideal day, you're the perfect alter ego, and you gas out after 3 months and you make terrible decisions afterwards, that was because you thought you were thinking in terms of short-term discipline and you weren't optimizing for long-term sustainability there. The difference, if you started thinking long-term, can I do this for a month? Can I do this for a year? You would do way less, like, in terms of energy output. You'd put in way less effort. You'd optimize for systems, make sure everything's actually sustainable, and then you'd actually get away with doing it with long-term. But the importance between doing stuff over the long term over the short term is the compound curve. The compound curve doesn't compound straight away because you put in loads of effort in the short term or something. It compounds over a long period of time regardless of how much effort you put in the short term. If you put in max effort short term, like, you know, you have this little spike of effort, the compound curve looks the same. It doesn't change. The only reason that, you know, you're going to struggle like this is because you are going to have no external validation for ages. You want to conserve your energy in a marathon. No matter how fast you run in a marathon, if you sprint max speed, you'll be nowhere near the finish line no matter how fast you run. You'll be closer, sure, but you won't be anywhere near compared to just run at a pace you can actually keep up. And then over time, you'll actually finish the race. It's a long-term race. If you sprint, you'll have no energy left. There's like no point in sprinting. You'll just look like an idiot towards like the start line. You sprint, you'll be ahead of everybody. It'll look great until you're not, until you gas out, until you get a stitch and you realize, shit, how am I actually supposed to get to the, you know, finish line at that point? Most people think short term. Most people are sprinters, and it's kind of like not even. It's kind of really bad because like whenever you think about New Year's resolution, I'm just to highlight the sort of short-term thinking that people have. New Year's resolution was 2 months ago. I bet 90% of people who set New Year's resolutions have given up by now. And they've completely forgotten about it, by the way, as well. They were motivated at first. Everyone's excited. Yay, I'm going to improve my life. They sprint in the marathon. They sprint as fast as they can and they gas out, and now they're laying flat on the floor. While all the other people who were just chilling and kind of running and enjoying themselves, listening to some music and stuff, they're way past them now. Just running, just by being chill. And now they look like idiots. And now they've been stuck flat on the floor. They're just forgotten about it. They don't even care. Their short-term mindset, short-term frame thinking has completely forgotten the whole point of their New Year's resolution. Now they're doing the exact same bad habits over and over again. You could probably highlight like a few of your friends or a few relatives or something, like some people you know that have done this exact sort of path. Like 2 months, they've probably given up. Why? They were sprinters. That's if they even try. But if they try, they were sprinters. They ran as fast as they could, gassed out, and fell flat on their face. And everybody else who was running and chilling and actually running the marathon the way they're supposed to are running way past them. And now they look like embarrassing failures. When they set the New Year's resolutions, they look like, you know, heroes or whatever. In order to think more long term, try to always apply this sort of marathon mindset. I think marathons are the best analogy you can possibly have. Just try and like, even then, I'd actually recommend, just for the sake of analogy and like understanding the metaphor, go for like a 1 hour run if you're capable. Just try to go for a 1 hour run. The first 1 hour run, just try to sprint, see how long you last, and then the next time, run at a pace you can actually keep up. And then look at the difference in the distance you actually managed to achieve. Look at the distance you achieve by sprinting, and then look at the distance you achieve by running at a steady pace. A, you run for way longer, but also B, you manage probably to achieve a massive difference. This is just going to highlight the difference in the compound curve and why long-term wins over short-term. Over time, the volume you exert, the energy you exert, is going to be significantly higher than any sprinter. You know, sprinters are losers, if you want to think about it like that, to some degree, I guess. Like, short-term sprinters fall flat on their face and they gas out. The long-term runners, you know, the slow runners, marathon runners, they take it at a pace they can actually keep up. They make sure it's sustainable. That's the end of the video, covering 5 sections. Hopefully that's actually helpful and actually kind of improves your life. And make sure to subscribe and like. And I highly encourage any discussion, any things you want to talk about in the comments. Hopefully that helped. Quite a long video for sure.